Okay, so we're just picking right back up where we left off. This is sort of part 2 of the circadian rhythm lecture. And this is all about the clock. So this is the biological clock. In humans, we have identified an area of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is located right near the chiasm, the optic chiasm, which is where the eyes cross to meet the brain. And it's located in the hypothalamus. So if you look here, you'll actually see that encircled in yellow is the suprachiasmatic nucleus. You see as one of the purple nuclei of the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus has a lot of jobs. It's very important in regulating a lot of different things, but we're just going to focus on what the suprachiasmatic nucleus part of the hypothalamus does in this particular lecture. So, is it important to have an SCN? So the suprachiasmatic nucleus. What's important about it? Why do we need it? When we take animals who have a normal suprachiasmatic nucleus and then we lesion it, meaning that we damage it or we take it out, we actually see the complete absence of a circadian rhythm. So if you look at the top graph here, graph A, this is an example of very similar to what I showed you with a human rhythm that's been in the bunker. This is an example of a free running rhythm of an animal that's been in complete darkness. So you can see that diagonal pattern happen again. And when you remove an animal from light, they run a free running rhythm. And as you can see here, it's a very typical pattern. And so if you, so the idea is to look at, okay, let's make this animal have a free running rhythm. So in the example on A, this is a normal animal with a normal functioning SCN and everything is fine. It's running a perfectly patterned free running rhythm, and that's what you want to see. You know that their SCN is working because it's sort of working internally. It's not using environmental cues. That SCN is just functioning how it needs to. Now, do you take that animal, okay, and you're putting it in constant darkness. Now, if you were to introduce light, then you would see a perfectly functioning normal circadian rhythm where you would see a straight down pattern. Let's take the same animal and destroy or lesion out the SCN, which is what you see in B. So B is where you see the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, has been damaged. And so what ends up happening is they have absolutely no rhythm whatsoever, okay? They are not experiencing a typical sleep-wake cycle that you would see even when you introduce light. So even if you introduce an environmental cue, that animal still cannot get a normal rhythm. It's just, it's impossible. The ability for the animal to adapt to a light and dark normal environment is completely gone. And if you put them in a dark environment, like the top, like they did before, again, no rhythm, okay? Because the SCN's job is to regulate, innately to regulate this rhythm. Now, let's say you take an animal that is normal, okay, and you pluck out their SCN and you put it in an animal where you've damaged their SCN. So you swap them out, okay? This has been done, and this is crazy, and this is really, really neat and really awesome. The animal that had the damaged SCN will now start a perfectly normal circadian rhythm, but it was based off of that donor animal. So whatever animal A is the donor animal, okay? Normal, healthy, fine, functioning SCN. Animal B is the lesioned, damaged animal. You take the SCN from animal A, put it in animal B. Animal B will now run a completely normal circadian rhythm that was based off of animal A. So it goes with the SCN. The rhythm goes with the SCN. So it's very interesting to see that this can actually be done. And this is really groundbreaking work. Very, very cool stuff. So we know that the SCN has an innate or endogenous rhythm because it goes with the SCN. If you transport it into another animal, which again, it has been done, we see that animal adapts that original animal's rhythm. Now, how does this work in terms of getting the message to the brain. Now, we don't go into the super detail. This is actually really, really basic that we talk about here. In mammals and in amphibians and birds, it's a little bit different. So mammals receive input directly through the eyes. It travels the retinohypothalamic pathway. So, retino, think of the retina, and hypothalamic, the hypothalamus, and it follows that pathway into the brain to process. We have very special photoreceptors that process light. Okay. We have melanopsin, which is a photopigment that is sensitive to light and can actually process that information into the brain to tell us, is it daylight outside? How much light are we getting? Is it dim light? Is it bright light? What's going on? Amphibians and birds do this through the pineal gland, and we're not going to talk about that specific thing. I just want to let you know that that is a different process. So one thing that I want to talk about, and the pineal gland is important in humans. Don't get me wrong. Okay, don't get me wrong. The pineal gland is important for releasing particular hormones, and there's some regulation in the pituitary glands. And so essentially what ends up happening is that all of this information works together to tell the brain where we are in time and what we should be doing. Okay, so a lot of people have heard of melatonin as a supplement. So I'm going to get on my little soapbox here, okay, because I think it's really important for everyone to really understand about melatonin and really understand what it does, okay, because I think people, what they do is they take it over the counter because they're told it's some magic sleep aid and it makes you fall asleep. And of course, it's something that everyone is like, oh, I have trouble sleeping, let me take melatonin. So let's just talk about what melatonin is, and then I'll talk about melatonin as a supplement. So first, let's go through what melatonin is, okay? So this is a particular hormone. It is involved in the process of sleep, okay? It is involved in the process of sleep. It is not the only thing that works when it comes to sleep. It is absolutely not the only thing that works. It is just one of the mechanisms that helps promote sleep in certain situations. So it acts as a Zeitgeber, but it is not the strongest Zeitgeber. The strongest Zeitgeber, or environmental cue to tell your brain what time of day it is and what you should be doing, is light. Okay, that is the absolute number one strongest Zeitgeber. Now let's talk about how melatonin works. So we have light and we have no light. When we have light, okay, what it does, it sends the signal to the eyes get this signal, and that follows the retinohypothalamic tract here, okay, and it goes to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which then sends signals to the pineal gland, okay. Now, we're not going to talk about the superior cervical ganglion right now, because that's not really important in this. I just want for you guys to have the basics. When that message gets sent to the retinohypothalamic tract, to the SCN, to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, okay, and that message gets sent to the pineal gland, it tells the pineal gland that it is daylight, okay, and to inhibit release of melatonin, meaning that light inhibits melatonin. Light tells your brain to cool it, and hold off on the melatonin production, okay? It says, don't release melatonin. We want to be alert. We want to be awake. Do not release melatonin, okay? So during the daytime, your brain gets the message through daylight to say, okay, do not release melatonin. As the sun starts to go down, and as the amount of light goes to the eye starts to reduce, it sends that message to the retinohypothalamic tract, to the SCN, and the SCN sends the message to the pineal gland, hey guys, it is getting dark. Let's start releasing some melatonin. Because melatonin promotes sleep. It's one of the factors that tells the brain to release other things to make you fall asleep, okay? So when it's light outside, our melatonin is inhibited. When it's dark outside, our melatonin starts to release, and it's based off of time. It doesn't flood the brain where a bunch of melatonin suddenly is released and it's over with, okay? It is a gradual process. So when it comes to what melatonin does, melatonin promotes sleepiness, okay? It's one of the factors that promotes sleepiness. One thing to keep in mind, okay, is that it is an absolute gradual process. There are things in our environment that can actually trick our brains. So for example, light at night, artificial light at night, will trick our brain into thinking that it's still daylight. So it may be giving this pathway, this inhibition pathway, more credit than it deserves, because our brain now thinks, okay, it's time to wake up. So when you use when you use a lot of artificial light, when you use blue light, for example, and blue light is mentioned later on in this slideshow, when we use our tablet, our cell phone, our laptop, our TV, fluorescent lighting, when we're having a lot of light exposure at night, we are telling our brain not to release the right amount of melatonin, because that's the way that our brain works. Our brain takes these messages in and it says, okay, I'm not supposed to be releasing this melatonin, so you're not going to get sleepy. So if you are up in the middle of the night and you can't fall asleep, the last thing you should do is get up, turn all the lights on, play on your laptop or play on your phone, because all you're doing is reinforcing the message, hey, it's light outside, I shouldn't go to sleep. Okay? So that's one part about melatonin. Now, another thing that's very important that I want to really punch home. This is a really good, super basic example of melatonin release. Okay? So the red lines are men, the blue lines are women, the triangles represent young, and the circles represent, the red triangle here, okay, so let's just go one by one. So here, the red triangles represent young men here, okay, so this would be a typical pattern for a young man. A typical pattern for a young woman would be a blue circle. So I don't know what I said before, just this is the way it is. So blue circle here is women, young women. An open triangle that's red is an elderly man. Here you can see that. And an open blue circle is an elderly woman. So you can see that. Okay, so you can see that age does impact how much melatonin. So this is plasma melatonin. This is the actual level of melatonin that's released. And this is over the course of the day. Okay, so you can see there's an age difference here. But I'm going to focus on the young men and young women because this is a college course and most people in the class are, not elderly. And so this is going to be, more impactful, I think. So looking at this, at noon, you're releasing very, very little melatonin, okay? And as the day progresses, you can see that the pineal gland will not release melatonin until it starts getting later in the evening. And here it's a gradual release. So you're seeing over the course of a few hours, we're seeing, 20, 40, 60 units of plasma melatonin being released by the brain. Now, over the course of the night, as the night progresses, you see that this is gradually increasing until it reaches its peak, which is about 2 or 3 a.m. That is the time you should be asleep, and your peak melatonin is going to keep you asleep. Then, as the night progresses, it's going to slowly decrease. And then when the sun comes into your room and tells you, hey, stop releasing so much melatonin and we want you to be awake, you see that it starts to decrease until it hits about 8 a.m. to where it plateaus again until the next day, until the next cycle. So here we see this very gradual melatonin release. Now, a couple of things about melatonin supplements that I think that people really need to understand. There are two major types of melatonin supplements. One that's considered fast release and another that's considered slow release. So if you don't understand what melatonin is and you don't understand how melatonin works, then you're not going to probably reap the benefits of melatonin supplements. So here we see that, let's say a person, it's midnight, okay? So this would be a typical younger person, whether they're male or female, releasing between 60 to 80 units of plasma melatonin at that point. let's say you're like, I got to go to sleep. I can't go to sleep. It's midnight. Man, this just sucks. I'm going to take some melatonin. But you're not paying attention to what you're taking. Let's say you take slow release melatonin. Well, what this means is that starting at midnight, you're going to have this graph move over, and you're going to start your release peak at a different time. So that means that your peak melatonin release, when you take this slow release melatonin, is going to be more like, 6 or 8 a.m. So you're going to be super dragging. You're going to be the most tired that you can be because you are peaking your melatonin release. That's the most tired you're going to be. So if you have to wake up at 8 a.m. to go to work, you're going to be dead to the world, and you're not going to want to get up. Now, and then you're going to be shot for the rest of the day, and you're going to go, I don't even bother taking melatonin. All it does is make me, sleepy at the wrong time, or it doesn't work. Okay. For a lot of people, it doesn't work because people don't take it correctly. Now, let's say you're taking fast release. Okay. And you're like, I know that melatonin release is very gradual. I'm going to take this fast release at 6 o'clock. And let's say you get your peak at 8 p.m., let's say 7 or 8 p.m., you're going to wake up so early. You're going to wake up in the middle of the night, and you're going to be wide awake because your peak release will be at 6 or 8 p.m., and you're going to be, not functioning right. Okay. You're going to be completely up all night because your peak release was at the wrong time of day. So those are the problems with fast release and slow release, that people tend to take them at the wrong times because they don't understand what melatonin release looks like, and they don't understand what it looks like over time. And to a typical person, they may not realize that the peak release is around 2 or 3 a.m. Now, all that aside, let's say you know everything there is to know about melatonin. Let's say you're an expert on melatonin release. Let's say you know everything. The problem with over-the-counter supplements is they're not regulated by the FDA. So you have no idea how much melatonin you're actually getting. So you could be thinking that you're getting, 100 milligrams, let's just say. But in reality, it may only be 10% of that. And so you're saying it doesn't work, melatonin doesn't work on me. Well, it could be simply that you're just not getting enough. And you don't have any way to know. The only way to know how much melatonin you're getting is to get it prescribed by a doctor. And for a doctor to actually write you a prescription, you go to pharmacy and you actually get it, not get it over the counter. If you just walk up to Walmart or Walgreens or CVS and you go to their supplement section and you pluck it out and you try to take it, then you have no idea how much melatonin you're actually getting. So that can be really dangerous because you don't know what you're putting in your body. You don't know how much of it you're putting in your body. You always run the risk of, when you supplement something like melatonin, and if you do it, for example, in children, or if you do it over a really long period of time, we don't know what kind of negative effects that might have over time. We don't know if that means that your body is going to start producing less because it's getting it externally. And so when you want to come off of melatonin, you might have a hard time because your body's used to getting that externally. We don't know what kind of effects it might have on you. And so that's another reason why taking it for the long term, or giving it to children, for example, can be really dangerous, is because we don't know what it looks like over the course of 10, 15, 20 years when you're taking over-the-counter supplements, and we don't know exactly how much you're getting. So that's my little soapbox of melatonin. I'm not a huge proponent of taking it over the counter most of the time, because a lot of people who have problems sleeping can actually correct their sleeping with proper sleep hygiene and learning and educating themselves about how to get better sleep. And that's something that we're going to learn about later in this course, about how to improve your sleep just by your own behaviors. And I think that what you'll find is that removes this need and this feeling of, I have to just take a pill, because it can be dangerous to just try to solve it that way. So that's kind of my take on melatonin and an explanation of what it does and how it works in the brain. Just very, very basic. And so the rest of this lecture slide series is relatively self-explanatory in terms of what this looks like in humans. And, if you look at, there are some other terms here that they're explained, and I think that they are pretty easy to grasp. But just to kind of give you an idea, and these chronotypes here. This is just looking at, sort of generally speaking, how people tend to fall into a chronotype of being an owl, being a night owl, like a night person, or being a lark, being a morning person. And just going through these, there's some videos here that I think are really, really neat, really helpful for you to understand just how expansive the idea of a circadian rhythm is, and how important it is to understand the biological clock in terms of how it actually helps in terms of our health. So the rest of this is looking at things like jet lag and daylight savings time, shift work. I talk about some of the studies that I've loaded onto Moodle for you guys to check out. And so I think that a lot of this you can read on the slides. If you have any questions, of course, that's what the question forum is for. And I want you to make sure to use that if you want me to expand on anything, or if you're confused about anything. But just to kind of keep in mind that when it comes to circadian rhythm, and it comes to a normal rhythm, when you disrupt that rhythm, whether it be with shift work, whether it be, with changing times or things like that, if you do that too much, what you're doing is you're damaging your cells, and your cells get confused and they don't reproduce properly, or they don't function properly. And that can be problematic for your health. And what you'll find is throughout this slideshow, maintaining a very, very consistent circadian rhythm is really vital to your cell function and vital to your cell health, which is why we see, for example, in shift work, we see a lot of incidences of things like prostate cancer in men, breast cancer in women, for shift workers who have, 10, 20, 30 years in a career of shift work when they're doing it for a really long period of time. So if you have any questions, use the question forum, or you can shoot me an email directly, but remember, you do get extra credit for the question forum. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and good luck this week on your quizzes and your tests.